Hello, happy people. Yes, happy people, because today is the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. That's right, folks, 50 years. 1971, October 1st is when Walt Disney World opened up, and today we celebrate a little bit of its history. How crazy. 50 years? What is that? Disney's at 75? Anyways, so today I figured in honor of the Walt Disney World's anniversary, we'd take a deep dive into some of the history of Disney and just go all out into the wonders of Disney. So if you like Disney, or you like a little imagination, opportunity, optimism, the sheer craziness of how these places were built and in the time frame that they were built and in the time that they were built before any of the wonders that we have today. Truly ahead of their time and super spectacular. So I figured what better way to do that is, last year Disney Plus put out a documentary series called Imagineering. And so it kind of takes you through Disney, but through the eyes of the Imagineers, like throughout the years from the start of Disney all the way up into pretty much now. It's a really fascinating documentary because it shows so much more of just like Disney. Of course, like if you're a fan of Disney, you're going to love it. But quite honestly, I got so much more out of it because their ideas of progressing forward and being creative and using imagination to its fullest and working together and creating friction and motion and just going for it, right? Like even if they made a mistake, they were on their way to fix it. They were just go. And this documentary series really gives a clear highlight into that, and I thought, what a better opportunity than to kind of go through that while we look at, the anniversary. So really I'm going to focus on episodes 1 and 2. I'm going to just talk about Disney. But a lot of the information I'll talk about comes from this documentary series. If you want to go watch it, go ahead. If you want to hear me, here we go. It's just, come on. He had already pioneered animated films. The company was coming off some great success, and here all of a sudden, he's getting into his later years, and all of a sudden he has this idea that he wants to build a theme park. Walt Disney, of course, wants to build a theme park, and it's like, are you what? Why would you want to do this? Nobody does this. They're gross and they're horrible. And he's like, mine won't be like that. It's gonna be awesome. Can you imagine that story of him hanging out on a park bench with his kids, and he's like, oh, there should be a place for all of us to go. And then that little idea, just a simple small thought like that, lighted a fire that you could not what? Very few people have that level of fire and just go. They have a dream and they're going to make it possible no matter what. And so it was just really cool to see that development, even because, I forget. We're going on 75 years ago that Disneyland was even open, right? I'm nowhere close to that. So going back in time and looking at that for me was so impactful, because you look at the amount of creativity and imagination. Everything they did. There was no computers, or nobody had ever done any of this stuff before, and he had to bring in creative, out-of-the-box thinkers, push them together, these forces that normally would not work together, push them in a room together and say, this is what we're doing. No, this is what we're doing. And, it was really interesting. At one point, one of the Imagineers was talking about how Walt didn't care about what you did yesterday. He was only focused on what you did today and going forward. Yesterday had already happened. And I think that is such a cool. It's a really phenomenal quality of a leader as well, because you're constantly pushing the envelope to go forward, and it does allow you to make mistakes, because it's not about making a mistake, it's what you're going to do about it. We're all going to make mistakes. Walt made plenty of mistakes. Trust me, look at this documentary. There are mistakes all over the place, hurdles and jumps, and to top it all off, his brother, which we're going to have to give immense credit for, because without him, this would have never happened at all. I mean, even though Walt had the imagination and the creativity and the drive, without his brother, they, in a lot of respects, would have just been that. It would have just been imagination. It would have just been dreams, because Roy had a way of manifesting that into reality in a problematic way, or in a way that allowed for it to really come to life. I mean, without him, you got nothing. I mean, seriously, Roy had really good practical ideas that formulated and opened up the doors to allow Walt to be as creative as possible. Without Roy, you wouldn't have Walt. I mean, and I've been thinking a lot about this, because it's almost like here you have this most like impractical person, right, who has all these ideas of, you know, making people happy, which isn't really a conversation, and it should be. But I mean, this guy truly believed that there was no bad people, that they were just good, and he wanted to provide an experience to where not only to bring happiness to everybody that he met, but also to remind us of the power of creativity and the power of moving forward, and the power of what tomorrow can bring. And yes, we make mistakes, and yes, there's turmoil, and yes, you know, there are dark times all around. But there's always a tomorrow, and there's always a way to change what's happened. And, you know, sometimes we get so caught up in the mistake that we aren't willing to move past it. And a lot of that, I think, is just because it's a problem with ourselves, right? Like, we don't want to move forward, so why are we going to let anyone else, you know, move forward? Or how can we let anyone else move forward? Because we haven't allowed ourselves to move forward. And Walt, you know, he didn't really worry about all of that stuff. He had a dream, he had an idea, and he wanted to make it happen. And he was going to do everything in his power to make it happen, because he didn't believe that it wasn't going to work. He just needed to make it work, you know? And his brother protected that idealism and made it a reality. You know, because a lot of times when you bring that level of creativity and opportunity into the forefront, there's no practical way to make that happen. And could you imagine in the 50s, you get somebody walks up to you and go, "Hey, I'm build a theme park that's going to cost triple the amount of money that you could possibly imagine." We're talking millions of dollars, like $17 million, I think it costs for Disneyland to be open. Unheard of money back then, especially for a theme, like, and what we're gonna go and ride some, like, what is this? They're most theme parks that were even available in that time were nasty. The people were horrible that worked there. Like, they weren't very fun places to be for the most part. I'm sure there were some that were, but it wasn't really a place like to go to. And how are people going to get there? Travel wasn't a big thing. You know, you're out in Anaheim, which back then was a nothing. And then, let alone when we get to Florida. I mean, Florida was the swamp. I mean, they had absolutely nothing. And they literally had to build a city, which was super, what? So you go from, picture this timeline. Here you have this guy, right? One dude, and his brother, but it's one guy who wants to build this theme park, and his brother's going, where are we going to get the money? No, you know what? I believe in him. I'm going to make it happen. So he makes that happen, right? And all trials and tribulations. I mean, they had concrete that was sinking in on opening day. The teacups were all broken and spinning out of control. It was absolute chaos. Like, there was a plumbing strike. So he had there was just issues all over the place. So he had to like put in either bathrooms or like water, and so he had to put in bathrooms because people need to use the restrooms. So all he could sell was Coke. So he got blamed for like trying to like sell like Coca-Cola products. I mean, there it was just and there was a bunch of like comp tickets. It was way over exceeded like park capacity. You had people like jumping on into the Autopia cars, just hopping over the fence, like, "Hey, it's my time to ride later." It was absolute chaos from what, especially from what like the documentary talks about. So they wrap that up, right? And it becomes a success, of course. But almost as soon as it's done, he's like, all right, well, now we're going to go to Florida and we're going to build a city. Now, of course, unfortunately, Walt didn't get to see that vision, which is kind of where his brother really takes over, and where I find, where I really found really admiration for his brother. I didn't know a whole lot about his brother. Of course, I knew about Walt, after working at Disney, and he's been, of course, an inspiration of mine. But Roy really surprised me, and it's really shown like throughout this documentary. Like he really comes up with the most. He really makes the impractical practical. Like he really had a way of channeling his brother's creativity and making it a reality through, even though he also thought it was impossible. Like he would go, not gonna like what, no, but he found a way to make it happen because the belief that his brother had, he knew that it wasn't going to stop. Like if Roy didn't help his brother, Walt was going to do it anyways. So with Roy being there, it added a level of protection and a level of financial backing that Walt really needed to make these things a reality. And when Walt passed, they had just started formulating the idea of Walt Disney World, and Roy was about to retire. I mean, now we're talking, 1966 is when, Walt Disney passed away, and they'd already been in business for 40 years. They were already, at that age to retire. And of course, Roy was his older brother, so of course he was ready to retire. And now he had to re-pick up the mantle and build a city. I mean, I don't think and I've only been to Walt Disney World like once, but Walt Disney World is a city. Like that place has its own electric, water, power, telephone. I mean, he had to. The only way that he could get it built is, and Walt wanted something separate. He wanted a city of the future. That's what kind of Walt Disney World is supposed to be, a city of the future. And so Roy had to get the state to allow him to separate that land from basically the government, so Disney could run it as its own city. And we're talking, the park opens 1971. They've barely even done anything, and it's 1966. They built a city in 5 years. That's incredible, especially during that time. Like, I don't know how fast cities are built, but I mean, maybe now they're built pretty quickly because of the level of technology we have. But 5 years to build not only a city, right? It's one thing to build a city, but they built a theme park in that city. Like it's not just it's not a city where you just like go and hey. This is a theme park with rides and a castle and a mouse, and it does stuff, and you're like, what? So the fact that he was able to bring that to life, and what was really cool about the documentary is it really points to the fact that at this stage in his life, he was really able to pick up the creative side. He got to watch his brother all these years go through and be creative and be imaginative and create just, I mean, say what you will about Disneyland, especially as you grow up, things change, people change, this, that, and the other thing. But the marvel of what that is and the fundamentals of what that place is a reminder of. And, it's just incredible to see that one person put together all these heads, and then it was that collective that really brought all this together. Walt was the driving force for sure. But without Roy and the Imagineers and really the people that he, cultivated, it wouldn't have been what it is today. And to see that drive and to see that be spread out among so many people, to continue that on, right? Even if it doesn't go the way we all want it to go sometimes, especially in today's world where everything is blown way out of proportion. But it's amazing to see that those fundamentals of moving forward and keeping creativity, imagination alive, and working together to solve problems, and really, I think having happiness as a forefront of the conversation, right? Like, it may not always get to be the resolved end, right? Like, just because we want, everybody wants money, but that doesn't mean we all get it. But with Disney, they really put that up there. Like, we are trying to provide a level of happiness, and we're trying to provide a place where you can be reminded how important creativity and imagination is. And, this documentary points it out, Disney points it out, and I just thought it was really cool, especially with it being the 50th anniversary. I really thought, hey, let's talk about the Imagineering. Let's talk about Walt and Roy and really what a special pair that was. And also really talk about how it really just shows too, you need both sides of the coin. And you need the impractical and you need practical. And you need, people need people, right? Like, as much as Walt was the driving force and his ideas and are the foundations of what a lot of people go off, if it's not for those people, at the end of the day, it's just ideas. So we all need each other to support each other. And yes, we don't always agree sometimes. And yes, we butt heads. But he was one of those people that really showed that, because he took the most creative oddballs, you could ever imagine. They even talk about, like, you wouldn't hire these people in a normal company. Like, these people normally don't go in the same room together. But by putting them in the same room and by having a force that drives creativity and imagination, you're less worried about the frictions and the butting of the heads, which will, of course, happen. You can't have anything without that. But when you have that driving force of, at the end, we're trying to create happiness and imagination and possibility, those ideas really formulate that friction to create motion. And it's just really cool that Disney has stood the test of has stood up throughout all these years. And I'm not saying any given credit for up and down. They've of course made their mistakes. Everybody's made their mistakes, but they'll keep that foundation, and that foundation continues to shine. Whether that light dims or gets brighter, that'll always be the forefront, which means it'll always come back to that. Which means that light will only always get brighter. Whatever factors might dim it, it'll always stay brighter, and it'll remind us, hopefully, on some level, that with imagination and creativity, we can create, hopefully, a better tomorrow, and that there is a better tomorrow, and that we need to remind ourselves to work together. Which, what? I really think, and even watching this, majority of people, we want to work together. Even when we butt heads, we do try to come together. We do try to come to common ground. And, I just wanted to give a big shout out to the 50th anniversary and just give a little introspective on the history and just how powerful, it is, and how cool that we're at the 50th anniversary and that they're still kicking strong, and that Marvel and Star Wars, they've got it all. They're having fun. Happiness, 50th anniversary, let's do it to it. I'm going to be popping off with a lot more Disney stuff, a lot more Disney reviews. Jungle Cruise is coming. Disney Plus is coming out with stuff left, right, and center over the next few months. It's going to be a great Disney season. So thanks for kicking it off with the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. We'll see you guys all next time.